Hello! So I'm here to show you the next part of the 3 C's, which is cylinders. So cylinders are the basis of any pottery shape, really. If you can master throwing a good cylinder, getting a nice height on it, then you can pretty much ensure that you'll be able to throw any other shape. So let me show you how I throw a cylinder. So you've already centered your clay, you've already coned it up, and it's nicely in kind of this disc shape that you want it to be. And now I'm going to show you how I create that cylinder shape. So again, my left elbow is in the crook of my hip, so that never really leaves it. That's where it is all the time. I'm going to make sure that my clay is nice and moist. And I'm supporting the clay with this part of my left hand. And at this stage, my wheel is going to be going at probably about 3/4 speed. So adjust your wheel slightly, so it doesn't need to be going full speed at this point. And I get my right hand and I just rest it on my left, just to give it a little bit of support. And I'm going to use my middle finger on my right hand, and I'm going to push down right in the middle, and I'm going to stop about just under 1 centimeter before I hit the wheel. Lots of people ask me, how do I know how far down to go? Well, you don't really. You kind of have to judge it, and the only way to do that is through practice and repetition. Now there is a way to kind of cheat it, so you can get a needle tool. Is to take a needle tool like this one and stop your wheel and push it down through the center of your clay, right in the center, until it hits the wheel, and then just push your finger down and then lift it up, and that's how much clay you have on your base. Once I've got to that point where I know that I've got enough clay at the base, I'm going to start pulling back with my right finger, and I'm going to make sure that that clay doesn't get dry at any point, because if it does, then my hand, could you see my hand there? It started pulling, and that's not what you want, because that's going to push your clay off center. It's going to pull it out, and I always have the clay between my hand and my finger. I don't have my hand over here and pulling over here, or my hand down here and pulling over here. Always pulling the clay in between my finger and my hand here. Then when I have the diameter that I want, I'm going to take my thumb, just going to get rid of some water so you can see what's going on. Take my thumb, and I want to compress the base. Now compressing the base, you want the wheel going about 3/4 speed again, and I'm just going to run my thumb, just this part of my thumb, you can see where the clay is on my thumb there, this part of my thumb, just in the center, over to 9 o'clock. I'm going to do that a couple of times. It helps to force the particles of the clay together, and it helps to avoid S-cracks. I'm going to do that 2 or 3 times. I'm going to get rid of any water that's maybe accumulated in the base, because you don't want any water to sit in your clay, because it's going to be absorbing it all the time, and that's going to mean it's going to get weak. Then I'm going to move my left hand. This is the first time I've moved my hand, and I'm actually going to do my first pull over on the right side of the clay. So I'm going to be working at about 3:30, 4 o'clock. So if this is the clock face, then this is 12 o'clock, this is 6, this is 3, this is 9. I'm going to be working at 4. I'm going to have my water in my sponge in my right hand, and I'm going to trickle that over where my fingers are going to be to make sure that they don't get any friction on them. And I'm just pushing the clay with my thumb on the outside and my middle finger and my index finger on the inside and I'm pushing towards the center of my wheel. Now I'm going up very gradually. I'm always moving slower than my wheel. That's really important. You move quicker than your wheel, then you're going to spiral your clay and it's going to go uneven and it'll probably go off center as well. And by me pushing my thumb in towards the center of the clay is forcing the clay up, because there isn't anywhere else for it to go, because the wheel's forcing it round. That centrifugal force is going to be pushing that clay up. And now I get this lovely cone shape here, so that's great because that means that as the wheel's going round, it's forcing the clay back down into the wheel head itself. If I went straight up, then the chances are the clay will start doing this. It'll start opening out and it'll get floppier and floppier and floppier and it'll just collapse. So you want that kind of cone shape. So once I've done one pull, I'm going to do my second pull. It's just going to be a knuckle pull, and I'm going to have my right knuckle of my index finger at about 3 o'clock, 3:30. Make sure that clay is nice and glossy. I'm going to have my index finger or middle finger on the inside, whichever you feel comfortable with, and I'm going to constantly have my hands in contact with each other, because that means that they are going to be a support to each other. So I've got my elbow and the crook of my hip again. I'm going to gather that clay up from the base and I'm pushing towards the center of the wheel again with my knuckle, and I'm going steadily up the side of that clay and I'm going slower than the wheel. So at this point I've slowed my wheel down to about half speed. The taller your piece gets, the slower your wheel needs to be moving, because as the clay moves up here, there's less of it to move. It gets thin, it gets weaker, so you need to control that clay a little bit more, and to slow that wheel down means that gives you that control. So that's the second pull. Now my third pull is going to be the one that I'm going to open this out into a nice cylinder shape. So I'm just going to even up that pressure with my inside finger, guiding the clay straight up this time, because this is the last pull. This is what's actually going to give me that cylinder shape. And as I move my knuckle and my finger up, I'm just easing off that pressure ever so slightly, because again, the further you move up, the thinner that clay is, the less clay you need to move, so you need to ease off the pressure. So there we go, I have kind of a coney cylinder shape here. And now to give me that perfect straight-sided cylinder, I'm going to take my bamboo rib, I'm going to put it on my wheel, I'm going to guide that clay up, scrape a little bit off at the bottom, guide that clay up using my middle finger of my left hand. I have my right arm this time leaning on the side of my splash pan, making sure that I don't get any friction at all. Anytime I feel friction, I'm going to get a little bit more water. I'm going to gloss that clay up. And my wheel is going about 1/4 speed at this point. And I'm just guiding up that clay, moving it into the perfect cylinder shape that I want. Now that cylinder is nice and even. It's a good size for a mug if I wanted to turn it into a mug, or I could pull it out even further and turn it into a bowl at this point. I could collar it in, make it into a little vase. So cylinders are the shape that you want to master. You want to practice this 100 times, and then you can start making other things. And there you go. There's your cylinder. Now go and practice that 100 times and you're going to be a pro. If you enjoyed that, then why don't head over to my Pottery Club, where I share monthly tutorial videos, I share pottery techniques, tips, and there's a lovely supportive community waiting for you over there. We'd love to see you. Okay, bye!